Take it away. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. We have a really exciting program tonight. Linda Thomas-Fowler is going to tell us about automation or some kind of automation. And what's that program that I keep forgetting the name of that program? Tell us. It's N.I.N.A. I'm sorry. But I was going to sing a song tonight. Let's see. I'm so excited. I just can't hide it.
Do it.
I'm about to lose control, and I think I like it. I was going to sing it, but let's just quote the words. Why am I excited tonight? And we're excited because Molly has done something really special for the Astro Imaging channel. Don't go to sleep, Alex. Wake up. We now, either tonight or the next couple of weeks, we will be broadcasting in HD. Yay! Yay! Yay!
Hopefully, I think it's going to work.
I think it's going to work. But anyway, so you'll be able to read things on the screen a little bit better, and you've been asking for that function for literally years and wondering why we can't do it. I think Molly has finally figured it out, and hopefully all our programs in the future will be on HD.
Yeah, Google is finally doing 1080p screen sharing, I think, but I'm trying to read online, for business accounts. So we now have a business account. It looks like it was looking at 1080p earlier when I was practicing, but we'll find out. We'll
find out. You please, is it supposed to be tonight, Molly? Is it?
Yep. Yep. That's why I got the other invite to from the new email address.
All right. So you people that are online, all of you. Oh, we got 53 people already, and more coming in. Let us know whether you have 1080p, whether you can see Linda in really high resolution.
And it's not just that it's available on the YouTube stream, because I can stream in 1080p without the screen sharing actually being in 1080p. So you'll just have to tell us how clear the text is. And hopefully Linda's internet's good.
I have no idea what she just said, but please do. Anyway, before we get going on that, I want to share my screen. Share screen. Share entire screen. You are presenting. Huh. That's not the right one. Let's try again. Share screen. I'm so excited. I just can't help it.
This is why I have to lock down the meeting, because everybody can see the URL.
Oh no. Entire screen. Okay, this guy. This is our calendar.
There we go.
Do we have the calendar?
We have the calendar.
Do we have the calendar up there?
Yes.
Okay, good. So here's our calendar for the next month and a half. I think we told you that we're going to go on the first and third week of the month rather than trying to do it every Sunday. And the calendar, we kind of are stacked up for the next few weeks, but after that, we are going to go on the first and the third Sunday of every month. We have a great lineup. Besides Linda tonight, Adam Block is going to be here next week. Next week, the 10th, yes. Ron Breacher, no show on the 31st, and then skip to the 7th, John Hayes. This is our A lineup for the next month and a half. But unfortunately, after that, it kind of looks a little vacant. So as we always do, please, if you have something you'd like to talk about in the Astro Imaging channel, go to the astroimagingchannel.org, click into the contact page, and send us a note, and someone will get in touch with you, and you'll be on the Astro Imaging channel. So let me turn that off, stop sharing. Go back to that. So if there's nothing else to discuss, Linda, tell us all about N.I.N.A and automation, please.
All right, thanks, Eric. And clearly the A lineup is starting next week. This week you're stuck with me. But I'll do my best to fill in.
Please. You're the A+ lineup.
You had to be the opening act for Adam Block.
Yeah, I can live with that.
Okay, we'll go with that. All right, go ahead.
So let's talk about what we're going to talk about tonight, which is a couple of years ago, I presented an autonomous N.I.N.A sequence, which I had done And in the last couple of years, N.I.N.A's changed and the plugins in N.I.N.A have changed. And I've learned a lot about what works and what doesn't work. And so I'm going to try to bring people updated on that. I'm not going to go into the guts of the sequence here. I don't think that's really so relevant for people as much as why things were done the way they were done and how you might go about either taking my sequence and adapting it to your own needs or writing your own. And it's all about constructive laziness. So this is about me. I do most of my imaging remote right now. I'm actually running 3 scopes off this sequence, and it's been working pretty well. And that last thing about me being a programmer, that's really influenced how this sequence was written, because thanks to the sequencer power-ups plugin in N.I.N.A, we can do a lot of program-like things in N.I.N.A sequences now. And speaking of sequencer power-ups, the author of that sequence, Mark, made a comment that I have crazy complex sequences, so you've been warned. So whenever you're doing something like this, I think it's important to start with what are your goals. And these were my goals. They may not be your goals. And really, it depends a lot on the equipment you have available. But I wanted something where the system could basically run for days at a time without a human being touching it if we needed to. And that if the roof, this was designed for being used in a shared observatory where we don't control the roof. So if the roof opened, then we were going to try to image. So these were the assumptions that I made when designing the sequence. And some of these were to simplify things, and some of these were just because that's kind of the way things were. The way things were was that the rig was in an observatory. We're going to talk a little bit about whether this is useful outside of an observatory later, but that was one of my underlying assumptions. And then I made this simplifying assumption that for any particular gain and offset you used, there was only one exposure, one sub-exposure length that you used. And for this particular sequence, we had things like bin 1 broadband, bin 2 broadband, and bin 1 narrowband. And those were the 3 things that we had to worry about. Although Target Scheduler can actually handle more complex things than that, Target Scheduler doesn't do darks, although it will do flats. So if we wanted the sequence to do automated darks, I had to make some simplifying assumptions so that it could do that. That doesn't mean that you can't use the sequence and use more sub-exposure lengths, but you just have to get the darks outside of the sequence. And the other assumption was that you're using some kind of flat panel to do flats, because Target Scheduler doesn't support doing sky flats, at least right now. So these are the things that actually make it work. The N.I.N.A 3.2 beta branch is required. You need the Target Scheduler plugin, sequencer power-ups, and then the bottom 2 are plugins that we rely on, but they're not strictly related to imaging functionality. And that's Ground Station that we use to message about what the sequence is doing, and the Live Stack plugin, which we can turn on and off inside the sequence to have the sequence actually, to have N.I.N.A actually live stack images, which can be kind of fun. And you know, I did something here that would not have been possible without the hard work of a lot of other people. And all of these people, none of this would have been possible without them. Stefan, Tom, Mark, and Dale, and other people that I'm sure I don't even know the names of that have contributed to N.I.N.A. Without their work, none of this would be possible. So there are things that you need to have this work. And some of those things are things like an observing conditions driver so that you can know the weather conditions. You need a safety monitor driver so that you can decide whether it's okay to image or not. Some way to turn power to your equipment on or off. You need a flat panel. And if you want to do darks in an automated manner, then you probably need a shutter or at least some other way to ensure that the camera is in complete darkness. The camera sensor is in complete darkness if you're going to use darks through the sequence. So I said earlier that an observatory was one of my assumptions, but is it really required? And the answer is no, but I'm not sure why you would bother to use this sequence outside of an observatory. It actually has logic in it to be used either in a shared observatory or a private observatory. And for our purposes here, the idea I've called a private observatory one where you control the roof of the shutter, and a shared observatory one where you don't. Somebody else has control over it. You can use it without an observatory, but this sequence really wasn't designed for that. It's overkill in complexity for what somebody without an observatory needs. It might make sense to take a stripped down version of it and use that, but using the sequence as it exists right now is probably really overkill, unless you're testing equipment at home that you're going to send out to a remote observatory later. The way the sequence works is by breaking the day into a bunch of different periods. All but one of those periods are mostly idle time, and one of those periods at night is the imaging period. But there are things that can happen during those non-imaging periods, and basically we always check to see if flats can be done and get them if they're needed. We check to see if darks have been requested and get them if they're needed. And if all of that's done and we don't have any more work to do, we just wait for the next period. And if we are doing those things, but maybe it takes longer than the time available in that time period to actually get all the flats or darks you wanted, the sequence actually interrupts what's going on at the end of the period. And then during the next time period, or the next available period where it's okay to get flats or darks, we actually pick up where we left off. And let's say you're asking for, 1,000 bias frames. That might take a couple of days, but the sequence will go ahead and keep track, as long as it's not restarted. We'll keep track of the count that it's done and keep going until it gets them all. But really, the interesting stuff happens at night. And the truth is, the sequence doesn't really do any of that work. As soon as we turn things over to Target Scheduler, it's got control of the sequence for the rest of the night, as long as conditions are safe, and it does all of your imaging. But if N.I.N.A says the conditions are unsafe, we stop imaging, park the scope, and then we behave like a non-imaging time period where we can do flats and darks. And if things become safe again, then we actually pick up, turn things back over to Target Scheduler. And that could, in theory, happen multiple times during a night. So the sequence is designed to be customizable for each installation. And this is a big difference from the way it used to be done. As it grew into being used in more than one observatory, I needed a way to actually make it relatively easy to handle the things that were unique to each installation. And the way I came up with doing that were these templates. And N.I.N.A uses a lot, or can use a lot of templates, and this sequence relies heavily on them. So any of the templates that start with the name custom were intended to be customized by the end user. And so those, I think there's 9 of them, are there for you to customize for your own needs. And in fact, you pretty much need to customize some of them to be able to do anything. There's also 2 external Windows batch scripts that get called. The default implementations don't do anything. They're just called startup and shutdown. And if you can't turn on the power to your equipment through N.I.N.A, that's another place you can do them. And in fact, we use some digital loggers web power switches, and the ASCOM driver isn't very reliable on those. So we actually turn them on and off through the script. As I said, Target Scheduler does all your imaging and flat work. The rest of the sequence does safety handling and dark handling. And honestly, almost all the logic that's in that sequence is around doing those things. So if you wanted to try this out in your own system, the first thing you do is download the release package from GitHub. You need to take those 2 scripts I mentioned and put them in C:\autonomous scripts. put all the templates in Nina's templates folder, and then the main sequence itself in the default Nina sequence folder. Make sure you've got all the plugins configured, installed and configured, and then customize those custom templates for your situation. And by customize, you just load that template into Nina and then save it again as a template, and it'll overwrite the old implementation. One of these templates is particularly key, and it's the custom variable initialization template. And this basically defines what features that the sequence has that you want to enable or disable. And it sets the sub-exposure lengths for darks that you want, because although Target Scheduler knows what sub-exposure lengths you want, we don't have a way to know that outside of Target Scheduler, so you have to define it there as well. So for example, there's windows for when it's okay to take flats and when it's not okay to take flats and darks. And so you can enable or disable those based on what you want. So for example, if you don't have a shutter on your camera, and so you don't want to take darks during the day, you would set those, you would set daytime darks to false. There's another variable called max cycles that defines how many complete cycles the sequence will run before it ultimately ends. And the reason that we did that was that at one point, Nina had a reasonably substantial memory leak. And so if you didn't stop the sequence periodically, Nina would get unhappy, or Windows would get unhappy. And so I put some logic in to just say, how many nights do you want this to run before it stops? By default, it's set to 1 in the default custom variable initialization template. We have it set to 10. In practice, we never get that far because a Nina update or a plugin update comes out and we have to restart because of that. But if you do actually get to as many nights as you've decided it should run and the sequence ends, that's a good point to shut Nina down and then restart it, just to give yourself a clean memory footprint. Now, if the sequence is running and you said, you know, I haven't done darks in a few months, maybe it's time to do some new ones, there's a variable called need darks, and you just need to set that to true or 1. And the easiest way to do that is with the sequencer power-ups variable pane in the imaging tab. I can show you these things live in a little bit. But if you set that variable, the next time the sequence has an opportunity to do darks, it'll just start taking darks for you automatically. And you've listened to all of this and you said, but I don't need all that complexity. How do I make a version of this that doesn't do all these other things? Well, the good news is it wouldn't be too hard to do that. The bad news is you have to get into the sequence and kind of rip out the parts that you don't want. So the example I used here is we send messages to Discord that basically tells us what the sequence is doing. So everybody on the team can keep an eye on it and alert us if something went wrong. And if you don't want to do that, you don't need to send messages to Discord. You just want to look at your system. You can find all those instructions and just delete them. That's going to be tedious, but it's relatively easy to do. Or maybe you don't want to send them to Discord. You want to send them to Pushover or some other messaging service that Ground Station supports or some other Nina plugin supports. You could change them to use those instructions. So where do I get it? This is the URL for the sequence. If you search for autonomous Nina sequence on GitHub, you should find it. There's a releases section in there, and you can get updates from there. The current version is 0.46.1, and it's marked as pre-release, but really it is ready to be a 1.0 release. We've been using it for a while, and it's been running reliably. The only reason that I didn't was that I was waiting for 2 things to happen. Nina to be out of nightly status, which actually just happened this last week. But we're also using a beta version of the Ground Station plugin because the release version doesn't support Discord, and the beta version does, and that's still in the beta repository. So until that comes out of beta, we're going to leave it marked as a pre-release. As I said, this is running on 3 telescopes, 24/7, and it's been working really well for months at a time now. So I haven't got any plans for taking it beyond where it is right now. It's done doing everything that we want. The only thing that I might consider is putting in some kind of way to handle multiple dark exposures for, say, bin 1. Like, say you want to do short and long exposures. I can't really think of a clean way to do that that doesn't add a lot of complexity, but I'm going to be giving that some thought. And if there's a way to do it without introducing a lot of complexity, I may put that in. But otherwise, it's feature complete right now until N.I.N.A changes. One of the things that Mark, the Sequencer Power-Up authors, has said is that some of the features that are in Power-Ups should be moving into core N.I.N.A, like variables. And that should give us some ways to simplify some things in the sequence. Oops, excuse me. And may allow us to do some things better in the future. But that's kind of all, this could happen. Maybe it depends on what happens with N.I.N.A, and I'm not privy to what's going to happen there yet.
Linda, there was a question.
Yeah.
Somebody asked a question about rebooting N.I.N.A in general. I know you said that your sequence, you see updates that come along and you reboot anyways, but do you have a recommendation on how often you should reboot N.I.N.A just in general?
I don't have a specific recommendation. What I would say is if you're leaving N.I.N.A running, and part of this depends on how much memory you have on your computer. Let's say the computer that we run on at SRO has 32 gigabytes of memory. And if I saw N.I.N.A getting up to over 16 gigabytes, I'd want to restart it, because under normal circumstances, N.I.N.A runs less than 4. And can run really with about 1 gigabyte of memory footprint. It kind of depends on how many images are being handled by the LiveStack plugin. So I would say I wouldn't let it get up to more than half of what the memory that you have on your computer is before you restart it.
Okay, thank you.
So these are places where you can find me.
I'm sorry, Linda, I had a question. So if you're in a shared observatory, what are the rules for flat panel?
So what we try to do in the sequence is we restrict ourselves to only taking flats when the roof is closed. So we don't do flats if the roof is open at all.
Okay, good answer. There's nothing like lighting up an observatory with a flat panel.
Yeah.
People.
So we actually look at the roof status, even because your safety monitor may, in our case, we have safety defined on both the roof and weather conditions. The roof might be open, but the weather might be not great in terms of cloud coverage, but the roof hasn't closed. And so we'll stop, but we won't try to do flats if the roof is open. So these are places where you can find me. The first two are all imaging related. And the last one is a podcast that I've been doing that's completely non-imaging related. But if you want to see the things that keep me up at night, that's the stuff that I've been doing. And let me come over here and show you some things. So this is the system at SRO. And we can take a quick look at the sequence here. And this is the sequence that's currently running right now. And you can see right now it's in the handle noon through nautical dusk container. And I'll just go into one of these. I'm not going to get into the details unless anybody wants to. But we use a lot of this sequencer power-up instruction called template by reference. And normally in N.I.N.A, if you bring a template in, it basically makes a copy of that template in your sequence. But Mark created this wonderful instruction called template by reference, which doesn't copy the template into your sequence. It just references it. So basically in programming terms, it's like a subroutine. And so we can have one copy of that template. And if I need to change the implementation, I just need to change that one copy, and everywhere else it gets used in the sequence picks
Linda,
up
I'm
that
not
change.
sure people can see the text
Let
that
me,
you're pointing to. Can you zoom in on that?
how's that? Does that help?
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, I will say too, it does look better on the YouTube channel. So I think the 1080p is working.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I'm watching in high D with the full screen and template by reference. Well, there we go. We just grew it up. So it's
Yeah.
much bigger now. Everybody should be able to read it now. But
Yeah, I
I'm
think that's
looking at it in high def with the full screen. And even back then I could read everything.
Fabulous. I'm so excited.
And she just can't hide it.
just can't hide it.
So
We normally have copyright problems when we put music in that has already been recorded and is owned by somebody else. But we figured by having Eric read it, that nobody would recognize it. And so we're cool.
All right, let's digress to your presentation, Linda.
So this, for example, let me shrink that down just a little bit. This is the handle non-imaging time period. And there's a lot of stuff that happens in there. Like I said, we check that get flats when daytime variable, we look to see if darks have been triggered and that sort of thing. I don't want to get into the details of this because I don't want to put people to sleep. But if we look at, that was the handle noon through nautical dusk. If we look at this one, you can see it's the same thing. We call that handle non-imaging time period. The only difference is we set these two variables to be different values, and this template expects those variables to be set, and then we do things. The interesting stuff in terms of imaging happens here. And so example, you'll see that we do things like startup, which is a template that which calls the power on and does all of these things, which do other things. So none of this would have been possible without sequencer power-ups, because we can basically make it a program. So you can see here's an example of a custom template, custom power on one, where you can do things that are specific to your system. So in our case, we start APCC for the astrophysics mount. But let me close that down. All of the imaging work happens here inside the target scheduler instruction. And you can see there's not a lot going on there. There's some things that we set here that are target scheduler event handlers. So for example, if we're going to wait, we tell things to park the scope, we close the flat panel if there is one, and then we send an instruction via ground station that says that we're waiting until this period of time. So let me show you something here. Where did it go? Oh, it's up here. This power-ups panel, you can put variables in here that you want to look at. And so, for example, here's our max cycles variable that says we'll run for up to 10 times. And here's our cycles completed, which says that we haven't run any because I actually restarted it this morning. Here's that need darks variable. If I just change this, if I click this edit button and change that from 0 to 1, the sequence would start getting darks, or at least would at the next opportunity. And then there are just some other variables that I have in here to just keep an eye on things. Let me show you this. This is the log that we get from Discord, or that we send to Discord. And so, for example, let me back up here a little bit. So, for example, this is the start of the next day. You can see we completed our 5th cycle there, and then we're waiting until sunrise. Not much happened there. We wait until noon. That's our first time period. N.I.N.A told us that the roof closed, so we told people about that. And then again, we're still waiting till noon. Once we get to noon, then we're waiting until the start of astronomical dusk. And we're just, again, sitting there waiting. At some point, the roof opened and N.I.N.A told us about that, and we told the user about that. And then we, once we got to the start of astronomical dusk, we powered on the equipment, we cooled the camera, and then we turned things over to Target Scheduler. Target Scheduler told us it was waiting until midnight for the first target. And then when it finished the wait for that target, it told us what it was. This is the target name. This is the Target Scheduler project name. Told us when we were doing an autofocus, and then the ground station plugin gives us the option to send these so we can see a whole lot of detail about what's going on. And so we don't need to check in on the system so much. We can just monitor this Discord and see what's happened. So we can see here, we're waiting for astronomical dusk again, and we know the roof just recently opened. If we go here to the Texas systems, we can see the same kind of thing. So this has been really helpful in terms of knowing that the system is okay and that it's doing something. It's like, I kind of expected to see a message come through about this time. I didn't get it. Maybe I should go check. Did Windows reboot on me for some reason, or did they have a power failure or something? And so it's been a great peace of mind thing to just know that things are running properly. And if things go wrong, sometimes we can see that here and intervene without having to actually be logged into the system. So that is the basic gist of what happens. Let me go over here. And show you how you would customize one of these things. So for example, this one, well, that's not a very useful one. Let me try another one. We'll go to the custom variable initialization. This is the one that I said that was key. So you can, there's a bunch of sequencer power up variables here. You can set the observatory name. So this is really just my home outdoor setup because I can't find somebody to build me an observatory. If somebody knows somebody in the Shenandoah Valley who will build an observatory, let me know, because I can't get people to return phone calls. Anyway, you can set your the temperature that you want the camera to use. In this case, I've got 2 temperatures that I use based on how warm it is outside. And then this sets what dark and bias frames we want. So for example, do I want broadband bias frames for bin 1 broadband? And in this case, I said no. Same for bin 2. But I do want bin 1 darks for broadband. And really the distinction that I'm using here between broadband and narrowband is that you get an opportunity to set your gain and offset values for those 2 different things. But I do want broadband bin 1 darks. I don't want broadband bin 2 darks. And then these are for flat darks, which I've set to true, but not for bin 2 versions. And then this sets the exposure times that you want. Like I said, there's 1 for each of those. And then this sets the gain for each of those and the offset for each of those. And then this decides which of these flat and dark windows you want. So do I want to get darks when unsafe? Do I want to get darks when daytime? In this case, this camera doesn't have a shutter, so the answer is no. Do I want to get flats when it's daytime? Again, this system is outside, so the answer is no. But I am okay with getting darks and flats when it's unsafe. In this case, we do have a flat panel cover that I want the sequence to open or close. And we're not in a shared observatory because we're not in any observatory. So those are the variables that basically define how you want to do that. And you can give your observatory a name so that it basically shows up in the Discord so that you can tell which one you're looking at when you're running 3 of them. Other kinds of things that you might look at would be like if you had to do something unusual to park the scope, which in this case we don't. If you had to do something to warm the camera, and in this case, we'd provide a default implementation, which just says take 10 minutes to warm the camera. But we actually had a camera, one of the FLI cameras, that N.I.N.A would get hung if we just told N.I.N.A to run the warm camera exposure. So we needed a workaround for it. So I turned that into a template. So the default implementation just does this. And then, so for example, if you're not in a shared observatory, if you're in an observatory that you control, you might have to do special things here to before you open the shutter or the roof. You might, if I know some people have observatories where the dome has to be homed before you can open or close the shutter. And so you would do that sort of thing here. So let me think, is there anything else that's relevant? Let me just come back over here. And here is where the sequence is on GitHub. And if you want the releases, just come down here and get the latest.
Linda, if you want to put that link in the chat or email it to me, then I can drop it in the video description and into the YouTube chat.
Yeah, I can do that.
All right, cool. I'll get that added.
Oh wait, that's actually not the best link. Hold on.
Okay.
Well, just drop off that 0.446.1.
Okay, I'll go make it pretty.
Okay. Anyway, there is some documentation here. And there is a little bit of a wiki that talks about what's going on. It's not as complete as I want it to be, but we're working on it. This kind of goes through what all the variables are, what these scripts are, some ways in which it interfaces with sequencer power-ups. Yeah, there's not much to say there. And then this talks about the sequence itself and what each of these major containers do. So that's kind of the high-level overview of how you might do something like this. We've been using this sequence, well, really for a couple of years, well, the precursor to it, and then its modifications along the way into this form. The earlier version tried to be significantly more smart about when it could do things, and that actually made for extra complexity that didn't actually help people. And so over time, this kind of simplified the structure and distilled it down to something that I think is a lot easier, even though it looks complex. It's one set of complexity and then it's used over and over and over again. So once you learn it once, it's the same everywhere. And I think that'll make it easier for people. And it's broken down in terms of things into these time periods, which I think make it clear about when you're doing things. So feel free to download it and play with it to your heart's content. If you have a problem with it, you can enter a bug report on GitHub, or you can contact me. My email is linda@ac4lt.org, or you can contact me through the Linda's Astronomy Adventures.space website. And if I can help, I will. But odds are this is probably too customized for what most people want for them to use directly. So feel free to rip out the parts you want or to modify it in ways that you need. And hopefully it can help you automate things. And I suspect there aren't a lot of questions out there now, but if there are, let me know.
Chris, do you see any questions? I see some of them were answered in the chat.
A lot of them were answered. Some people were hopping on answering a lot of the questions. But I had a question. Is there any particular thing that's like the big gotcha or a concern that you run into even in your own?
At this point, no. Any kind of automation depends on reliable equipment. There's only so much that the sequence can do if the equipment doesn't work right. So that's really your gotcha. If your equipment has problems, then the sequence is going to have problems and it won't be able to recover from them. So that's really the only thing I can think of.
I know at least one mount that if they have a power fluctuation, it doesn't reboot.
Yeah, the problem that we would have is with the Digital Loggers web power switch. The switches work great, but the ASCOM driver not so much. And you would turn it on and it would sometimes just not turn on. So I finally gave up on using that and just did a little curl command outside of it to turn them on directly outside of the script, and that works 100% of the time reliably.
You might look at the 10 micron mount.
Pardon?
You might look at the 10 micron mount. I don't think that would be a workaround.
Well, for the 10 micron, one of the systems does have a 10 micron, and the problem there is waking them up from their I'm not alive state. And fortunately, originally we were trying to use the program that would pulse the 12-volt latch, and that didn't work well. But they respond to wake on LAN packets, and that does work reliably.
Wake on LAN, no, they don't.
Interesting.
Yeah, they do, because we're doing it.
Really,
have to
I have
enable it in
a
the
10
control.
micron. If you have a power, you have to rig up a special cable to get them to wake up.
Yeah, we can talk offline because
Wake on
we're
LAN?
using Wake on LAN.
I'm
What
pretty
about
sure.
Windows and its rebooting?
I hate it. I've turned off as much as I can and it still does it.
We all hate that. Even if you set, don't do anything for 5 weeks. That 5 weeks creeps up on you, and all of a sudden it's.
I mean, I've done everything I can do to keep it from rebooting, and there's one system that still just wants to reboot.
I wrote a batch script that lives in the startup folder, and it starts N.I.N.A, loads the sequence, and then starts the sequence. So if the computer reboots in the middle of the night, it just picks up where it left off.
Oh, yeah. I used to have N.I.N.A set to load the sequence automatically when you started N.I.N.A, but sequencer power-ups ends up in a race condition where it needs to set what the templates are, but it doesn't know what the templates are. And sometimes, depending on which of those operations happens first, it loses the linkages to all your templates. So don't set N.I.N.A to use this sequence as its boot sequence. Do what Molly said, where you start N.I.N.A and then tell it to load the sequence.
Could you put like a pause in like at the top or something so that it would have time?
No,
to
because it happens at sequence load time.
Okay. Yeah, I don't use the template calls and stuff, so I guess that's why I haven't seen that issue.
Yeah, you won't have an issue unless you're doing crazy complex sequences, like Mark said.
Alternatively, you can call N.I.N.A, have that load a sequence that runs a startup script that runs another instance of N.I.N.A that loads that sequence. It's N.I.N.A's all the way down.
Molly, we might need to schedule Linda for talking about the wake on land, because other people have mentioned that they're not able to get their 10 micron to get the wake on land.
No, I think we should double check. I have a 10 micron, power goes off. I literally have to call one of the guys to go in and push the buttons. There is some cabling, I can't remember what it is, some jury rig where you can get it to boot up, but not wake on land. I'm pretty sure about that.
We're doing it.
If you're right, you're welcome to log into my system and make that happen.
You have to enable it in the hand controller.
Yep. Enable it in the hand controller as well as in the boot. So
yeah, you want me to go through it here?
No, after the program.
Actually, we have a little time. If people are asking about it in the chat.
Plus, we'll have no memory. Why don't you go through it now? Because it's like yesterday I had to go and we missed a session of solar imaging because it didn't boot, and I go, oh, Chrome.
Then I can clip it and make a separate YouTube video for it that we can pass around more easily.
Let me.
So it's not just to wake up on land that you set on your PC, right? It's in the hand controller.
Yeah,
the wake on land for PC won't affect the mount wake on land, I don't think.
Yeah, let me find. Well,
it's a setting in the hand controller.
So we downloaded this wake on land executable, and you give it the MAC address for your mount, and it sends that packet to the mount. And then let's see, I think the mount's awake right now, so we should be able to do this.
And that's a Windows program that.
Yeah, you'll have to go find it on the net. It's not built in, but
yeah.
You know what I'm doing right now? I'm logging into my system.
And I don't remember where this is.
Oh yeah, that's another. Navigating their menu is an adventure.
But I think it's here under network. Yeah, see here, wake on LAN on.
Hold on, can you give me a moment to catch up? Sorry to divert it, but this has been
But believe me, I feel your pain. This was my biggest gripe about 10 micron mounts.
I like them. They're really solid as a rock, even if the interface can be a little bit clunky. So where is this?
So let's see. You're at the top. Go down to settings.
Go all the way down to settings. Sorry, everyone online. This is, if you will take notes, I'm sure more than one person will benefit from that.
When you're in settings, come down to network.
Hold on a second. I'm getting there. Give me a moment.
We still have 83 people watching, so some people want to know, apparently.
There are a couple of people that want to know this, so you're okay.
See, it's nice to know that even the really smart, experienced people can't find it, can't figure it out.
But if you're trying to automate and you can't get your mount to power up, that's a problem.
Yeah, it's a dumb question, but I'm looking at where's settings?
Yeah, I don't see any questions. There's some discussions, but most of the questions have been answered within the chat itself. Do we have
mates are in there answering questions?
Do we have the links to find everything we need? Somebody asked for the JSONs. Was that Dale or?
Yeah, so I put the link to the GitHub in the chat. I will add it to the video description after the live stream ends, just so I don't inadvertently mess something up. And yeah, so this will be available there. And then the GitHub has the files and also the information. Probably, I haven't gone through the whole thing, but it likely has all the prerequisites, like what versions of the plugins and app that you need, like Linda mentioned at the beginning.
And
Linda?
there was
Yeah,
some discussion about Windows updates and getting notified. I guess that's a new feature in Windows 11 that you can get notified if your PC reboots.
Ooh, interesting.
I'll have to look into that one. I hadn't noticed that.
Linda, I just checked. Wake on LAN is on.
Okay, yeah, if you turn that on and then you'll have to look up what the MAC address is for your system. You can send the packet to it.
Awesome.
Okay.
That took automating the 10 micron from a nightmare to, oh, it just works.
I want to note here while we're getting ready to close out that we are only 100 subscribers away from having 20,000 subscribers.
Yay!
So if you're watching and you haven't subscribed yet,
Punch
you
the
should do
button
that.
below.
You'll get notifications when we go live. You can also turn those off if you really don't want those.
But why would you?
why would you want to turn them off? And also liking videos helps us to be more visible out there on the internet, and people can go find out how to do all these amazing things that we do here.
Okay, are we all set? We finished actually in plenty of time. And
Yeah.
if we are, thank you very much. It's been very informative. And a lot of people are taking notes, and we'll download your software from GitHub. Probably it's like a lot of things when you scratch your head when you first get into it saying, I don't get this. But once you get it, it's second nature.
I think it all makes sense, but I wrote it. So if it doesn't make sense to me,
We can blame you. It's like Pix Insight, right? We look at it,
Yeah.
scratch our head going, and then now we can't go around it, and we use it blindfolded.
oh, it's definitely easier than learning Pix Insight.
Good. And that's
And
a
you've
good
got
point to
the
make.
annotations in there for what different stuff does and stuff like that. Yeah, I'd forgotten for a while that annotations was a thing you could have in N.I.N.A. And when I did my automated sequence, I started dropping those in everywhere to remind myself why I did things the way I did them.
Yeah, I tried to document it in places where it made sense.
Well, and you held your audience
Yeah.
excellently.
We had
Actually,
we had
there's still-
over 90 people for a while,
Yeah, what's
actually,
Yeah,
among our higher viewerships.
I'm honored
Yes,
that people found this interesting, and I hope that it's useful for people.
you should be.
A lot of good comments.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll say good night, everyone.
Take
Thank you
that,
so
Adam
much
Block.
for tuning in. Linda, please stay with us. And next week, is it next week? Tune
Yes,
in
next
here
week.
with Adam Block. Always has an interesting presentation.
Yeah,
Always-
he's going to talk about the image blend script, which from what I've been reading about it, looks like it brings in some of those things that all the people who prefer Photoshop over PixInsight complain about PixInsight not having, in terms of being able to blend images using like screening and other blending methods and stuff like that. So this should be really interesting to learn how to do that in PixInsight with this really cool script.
Yeah, I'll just have to say no comment.
Yeah, Adam Block's always great. So he's
He is. All right, good night, everyone. We'll hopefully see you all next week. Linda, please stay with us, if you would. We can talk about twisting your arm to be irregular again.
Yay. Okay, goodbye.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Good night,
All right,
everybody.
good night, everyone. Take us
Goodbye,
out now.
goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.